This chart is populated by some of the best family cars on the road. Vehicles that can cope with the school run as well as tackling wintry conditions, mildly rugged terrain, trips to the tip, towing duties, and long-distance motorway cruising. It's a highly contested and strategically important segment where style, safety, and space rank at the top of the agenda for buyers, and often room for 7 occupants is required. That importance is underestimated by manufacturers at their peril, given that the segment has effectively obliterated the MPV market and is only expected to keep on growing in the future. Many models are now available as tax-friendly plug-in hybrids too, as manufacturers scramble to grab a bigger slice of the increasingly emissions-conscious fleet market. Here are our favorites. At first, we are talking about Audi Q5. It's hard to pick faults with such a classy and consummate all-rounder as the Audi Q5. Although slightly anodyne handling is what will prevent the car from really appealing to keener drivers. This shortcoming hasn't prevented the Q5 from emulating the sales success of its predecessor though, which was a car that became the bestseller in its segment in nearly every country in which it was offered. Although a pricey option with a long options list, the Q5 is quiet, practical, and desirable, with outstanding driving refinement and material finish. And if you prefer your SUV with a little more style and less utility, there's now a swoopy roofed sportback version as well. The Q5 received a pretty wide-reaching facelift for 2020, with efficiency-boosted mild hybrid engines going in under the bonnet, some new digital technology going into the cabin, and wider trapezoidal grille going onto the front end. The big-selling 40 TDI version got a 14 power boost as part of that revision, and it remains a refined, comfortable, assertive performing, and easy driving family car. The 50 TFSIe plug-in hybrid is a particularly smooth operator, with its electric motor and 2.0-liter turbo petrol 4-pot combining to produce just shy of 300 HP, while the 55 TFSI ups that to pretty close to 400. Electric-only range and CO2 emissions have come down for both versions of the car, making them more competitive offerings on benefit in contacts than they used to be. Now next, we have Land Rover Discovery Sport. The Discovery Sport might be the entry-level Land Rover in the showroom range, but it isn't short on trademark Land Rover capability, comfort, or charm. Facelifted for 2019, the Discovery Sport now sits on the same PTA platform as the Range Rover Evoque, but hasn't lost out on any of the characteristics we liked about the original. It's still higher riding than many of its opponents, affords better visibility, and forks for capability than many, and feels more like a traditional SUV to drive than some while still handling in an impressively tidy fashion. It has a practical interior, a huge selling point in this segment being the availability of 7 seats for those who need them that has now been given a much-needed lift in premium appeal and also fitted with Land Rover's latest Pivi infotainment setup. Its petrol and diesel engines are now supplemented by 48V mild hybrid architecture in a bid to improve fuel economy. But the particularly slick P300 plug-in hybrid version is the standout version with its usefully long electric range. If you want a family SUV with more versatility, off-road ruggedness than the class average, the Discovery Sport delivers that with very few associated compromises. Let's check about the third option we've listed, BMW X3. What's this? A decent handling mid-range SUV. Before BMW set about making SUV, the idea would have been borderline laughable, but the BMW X3 is handling appeal down. The X3 is powertrains with plenty of power and performance. The smaller diesel offerings can be a touch unrefined, but the multi-cylinder M40 and M40 are both rapid and smooth. The plug-in X3 Extra third eye might not shine quite as bright as its conventionally powered range mates dynamically because, as things stand, it can't be had with the all-important adaptive M suspension, which brings with it mass checking, adaptive dampers. But in other areas, the petrol-electric X3 is slick and pleasing to drive, although it isn't the most tax-efficient of its kind due to a fairly small electric range. The BMW comes a close run third in class behind the classier Q5 and more useful Discovery Sport. Then, standard equipment is a bit mean on some trim levels, but the car's perceived quality is above that of almost all others, and its on-road manners are hard to fault. Now it's time talking about this amazing one, the Jaguar F-Pace. Jaguar's first SUV came to market with typically good handling back in 2016, as well as with plenty of cabin space, and looks like rocketed it to the top of Jag's range as its best-selling model until it was overtaken by the smaller E-Pace. There are one or two details that detract a little from the overall driving experience, among them some undistinguished four-cylinder diesel engines, a hesitant automatic gearbox, and a slightly jittery, noisy ride in certain specifications. But Jaguar did much for the appeal of the car as part of its major midlife facelift in 2021, with a much richer interior and a vastly improved infotainment system being added, and an expanded range of engines that now includes a Torque 6-cylinder mild hybrid diesel and a 6-pot plug-in hybrid petrol. For balance in town and out-of-town driving, the D300 diesel would still be our choice, while the mild hybridized 4-pot diesels have better drivability than they used to. The Go Faster F-Pace SVR is an absolute riot, too, and is a fine example of a brilliantly executed performance SUV brimming with fake drama. At the half of the research, we got Skoda Kodiaq. The Kodiaq is our top family SUV not to come from a premium manufacturer, and it undercuts even the cheapest of the plusher offerings on this list by a not insignificant sum. So what are you sacrificing? A chunk of premium feel materials for a start, although everything feels well screwed together. The top 4 SUV on this list all have better balance handling and ride quality than the Kodiaq, but not all of them offer a third row of seats. Aside from the slightly over-firm and remote way in which the Kodiaq drives, though it's an impressive car in most respects. An oily bits facelift could easily rectify its main problems, and we're due to drive one soon. This position is holding the Mercedes-Benz GLC. The second half of our top 10 is where the handling element sorts the class leaders from the also-rans. The updated Mercedes GLC, with its well-appointed and luxurious-feeling interior, deserves its place in the top 10, but its numb steering means it's far from the first choice for keen drivers. It's more car-like to drive than many of the full-blown SUV on this list, but it also rides less serenely than a Mercedes-Benz should on standard steel coil suspension, making it harder to recommend in base spec. On optional air suspension, though it's among the most laid-back, effectively comfort-oriented cars in the class, and it can be had in mechanical flavors as different as the GLC 300 petrol-electric PHEV, the GLC 300 diesel-electric PHEV, and the GLC 63 V8 hot rod SUV. Worth considering. Moving on to the next, we are listing Alfa Romeo Stelvio. Alfa Romeo took the platform and engines that made the Giulia, added some ride height, a raised hip point, and four-wheel drive technology, and created a fine-handling SUV in the shape of the Stelvio. Remarkable handling and typical Alfa Romeo film star looks come as standard, with a strong if gruff diesel engine to boot. Unfortunately, Alfa's focus on decent handling has resulted in a slightly restless ride on poor UK roads, and some of the cabin materials feel plain and cheap, just as they do on the Giulia. A facelift during 2020 improved things ever so slightly in this respect, and added a new infotainment system and improved driver aids. But it'll still take a keen eye to spot the differences between this and the original. It's priced reasonably competitively, though if not quite to the extent that it was at its launch 3 years ago. It's one for the keener driver without question, but perhaps not for the dynamically disinterested SUV devotee. In this point, we got this one, the Volvo XC60. This was the safest car ever tested by Euro NCAP at its launch in 2017, and all this time later, it's still one of the most handsome family SUV currently on sale. The XC60 is not the last word in driver appeal, but as a slick, comfortable, easy-to-use family wagon, there's plenty to recommend here. Volvo has revised its engine lineup, too, so that all XC60 variants now offer some form of electrification. The B-Series petrol and diesel models now have 48V mild hybrid architecture for fractional reductions in fuel consumption and CO2 emissions, but it's the 6 and 8 recharge plug-in hybrids that offer the greatest potential for low-cost running. They don't have quite as much electric range as rivals, though. We are almost wrapping up. Now have a look to see Tarraco. The Tarraco is Seat's first attempt at a full-sized SUV, and it's a pretty good-looking one. Being a Volkswagen Group product, the Spanish SUV shares practically everything with the Skoda Kodiaq, although, unlike its sibling, the Tarraco comes equipped with 7 seats as standard across the range. It feels a touch more incisive and agile than other SUV of its size, but this sharper handling does seem to come at the expense of rolling refinement and outright comfort. In a car such as this, comfort and refinement should arguably be of greater focus. Still, the interior is well finished and the petrol and diesel motors are impressively refined. It's priced fairly competitively, too. Finally, we select Kia Sorento. Well, the Sorento has really come a long way since the bland, boxy original model that turned up in 2002 has in it. On design appeal alone, this new 4th generation model easily has what it takes to mix it with the genuine premium players in this class. Thanks to its cavernous interior and 7-seat layout, it wins serious points for being one of the most spacious, practical, and versatile cars on this list. With an appealingly affordable price, it would seem on the surface that there's very little this handsome Korean SUV can't do. There is a but, though. Its conventional hybrid powertrain isn't quite capable of delivering the gains in fuel efficiency you might hope to see during balanced daily driving, and dynamically the car is pretty average. It's refined and comfortable enough at a steady cruise, but dig a little deeper and it begins to show itself, particularly where body control, ride sophistication, and steering feel are concerned. Still, as a practical, well-made, well-equipped, and sensibly priced family SUV that's easy to drive, it has a lot going for it. The diesel models offer decent refinement and performance, too, and the FEV is more assured and drivable than the regular hybrid also. It'd arguably be more of a head-over-heart choice than any other car on this list, but there's nothing much wrong with that. That's all for today. We upload automobile-related videos every single day, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for the upcoming video notification.